We have a lot of information to get you guys here, like so much so that I can't even get to the point where I make separate videos on this anymore. I have to condense a lot of these debuts into one video in order for me to get out as many of this content out to you guys as humanly possible. So if you haven't already done so, please take a moment to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe and turn on your notifications, because I don't know if you can tell, but your boy puts in work for you guys. I upload 2 to 3 videos a day depending on how much NBA news there is out there, and if there is no NBA news, I typically don't upload. On top of that, we have a separate channel for career simulations on NBA 2K21. It's just starting out, man, so if you think you're into that type of stuff at all, we just did a career simulation starting back all the way in the 1949 NBA season and resimulating to see if we would get a different result in NBA 2K21 on the PlayStation 5. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Guys, while the Houston Rockets are surrounded in a cloud of controversy, which, by the way, I made a video on this yesterday. I don't know if I should make another video on it today because there's just more and more information that keeps coming out as time progresses forward. We might have a separate video on that. But for now, let's talk about 2 individuals that used to be teammates making their debuts for their respective teams. As you see, Russell Westbrook finally suited up for the Washington Wizards yesterday. And man, does he look good. He looks in shape. And I keep on telling you guys over and over again that I believe the Washington Wizards are going to be a huge up-and-coming team in the Eastern Conference this season. It all depends on Deni Avdia's development as a player and how complete of a player he truly is. But you also have to bear in mind that this is a team that already had some solid role players prior to John Wall going down, and now that they have Russell Westbrook, who is healthy by the way, complemented by Bradley Beal, you also have the rookie sensation Deni Avdia out of Israel. You have Davis Bertans, which they gave a huge amount of money to in order to bring him back, and then I believe the chemistry for this team is already going to be very good because Scott Brooks and Russell Westbrook have some familiarity with one another. I'm going to say this over and over again. I understand Washington Wizards fans are sad that they're moving on from John Wall, but at the end of the day, I believe this team was beautifully constructed this past offseason. They had to make some very difficult decisions moving on from their franchise player from the past decade for Russell Westbrook, but at the end of the day, you're swapping out a player that is coming off of a gruesome injury in an Achilles tear for a player that is fairly healthy, whose skill set probably complements Bradley Beal's a little bit more. I always am a fan of buying low on someone's value, and I believe that's exactly what the Washington Wizards did. Now look, man, I don't mean to say this to take a dig at James Harden, but a lot of people like pointing at Russell Westbrook as the reason why things didn't work out in Houston. I've said over and over again, I don't think it has much to do with Russell Westbrook the person. I feel like it has a lot to do with the contrast in play style between James Harden and Russell Westbrook. But for those of you guys that don't think Russell Westbrook's a hard worker or he's a locker room cancer for some reason, check out this report from Chase Hughes on NBC, bro. Apparently, Russell Westbrook showed up 2 hours early to his first Washington Wizards practice and set a tone with his intensity. Now, if that doesn't tell you what type of player Westbrook is, then I don't know what does, man. I'm excited to see what Russell Westbrook could do in the East this year, and as you can see from this footage in front of you, you should be as well. For the first time ever, Kevin Durant has donned a Brooklyn Nets jersey and has showed up to Nets practice to participate in practice with his teammates. And I don't care what you think about Kevin Durant. I don't care what you think about his antics on social media or the fact that he joined the Golden State Warriors after blowing a 3-1 series lead to him when he was with the OKC Thunder. I don't care about any of that. It's just great to see one of the faces of the NBA make his return and practicing with his teammates. This is a brand new storyline that we could finally follow along. How will the core of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, 2 individuals that were facing off against each other in the NBA Finals just a mere 3 years ago, fare now that they've joined each other in the Eastern Conference? Bear in mind that this is Kevin Durant's debut in the Eastern Conference, and they have a fairly interesting coaching staff. They have a coaching staff that is composed of former NBA League two-time MVP Steve Nash and his head coach that made him an MVP during that time in Mike D'Antoni. I believe Mike D'Antoni will be a remarkable assistant coach. The number one knock on Mike D'Antoni has always been the fact that he is extremely gifted offensively, but kind of has some defensive inadequacies. But the one thing I saw from D'Antoni that really made me feel quite encouraged by his coaching style is his ability to make alterations to his offense based off of the skill set of his players. When he was coaching Steve Nash, he really pushed the pace as much as he could and ran a lot of pick and rolls between Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire. He tried to do that with James Harden and Clint Capella, but eventually he just transitioned to running an offense just strictly through James Harden's ability to isolate. And although it didn't really work out, the fact that he was willing to give that an opportunity really just encourages me in terms of his ability to coach. I personally have a ton of respect for coaches that change up their style of coaching and change up their offensive playbook based off of the players that they're coaching, as opposed to forcing the players to try to fit into their scheme. Now, that's just their assistant coach. This season could go one of two ways for the Brooklyn Nets. They could either dominate the opposing teams that they face off against, and the East could run through them, even though the East is significantly stronger this year, or they could be the number one soap opera in the NBA, very similarly to the way it was 6 years ago when they traded for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry. Obviously, I don't want to sound biased here. I do believe the pieces are in place for them to potentially be this year's soap opera because, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving always give sound bites to the media, and even if they don't, the media just seems to target them to try to crucify them. But in my opinion, I feel like this is really good for the NBA nevertheless. It's always fantastic when a superstar returns from injury, and I honestly can't wait to see what these two could do as a tandem together. Now, something you should bear in mind, and if you made it to this point of the video, I want you to let me know what you want our next video to be on, because this is possibly going to be what our next video is going to be on. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, there were these rumors about James Harden potentially getting traded to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, there's been some weirdness around that because apparently James Harden committed to the Houston Rockets again. They didn't show up to the first day of training camp so he could go to Lil Baby's party. We have a video on that I'll show to you at the end of this video in about a minute or so. And then today he also didn't show up to the Houston Rockets training camp, and last night he went to Dre's nightclub, which I'm shook that it's still open. I thought that Las Vegas was on lockdown, but that's a different conversation for a different day. What I'm trying to say is Kyrie Irving has said before that he does believe that the Nets need a third star. He does want to ship out some of their depth in order to bring in a third star player. But personally, I'm against that. I honestly think they should see what Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving could do before they potentially make such a move. So let me know in the comment section down below what do you think is going to happen, because if things don't go well in Brooklyn, then I fully expect them to make a huge trade in order to potentially acquire James Harden, a trade that would kind of involve like maybe Spencer Dinwiddie and Jared Allen and Karis LeVert and maybe a couple dozen first-round picks. But let me know what you guys think. Aside from that, I'm your boy, TheFlightMike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.